Hey guys, welcome to Memory Lane. Now if you're happening on this channel for the first time, this is where I sit and I reminisce about, the good times growing up in the 60s in rural Jamaica and a little bit of the 70s and maybe touching the 80s just a little bit, but generally the 60s, right? So if you're happening on this channel for the first time, welcome. It's good to see you. All right, so today I want to talk about a little thing that my parents used to do, or most people in the village had to do from time to time because of a certain rodent. Yes, man. So back in those days, growing up in rural Jamaica, man, it was common. It's a tropical country, right? So you have a lot of little critters running here and there, all over the place. The good thing about Jamaica, even when I was a kid, there was nothing there to hurt you really bad. I mean, there was occasional scorpion bite, but apart from that, there's nothing in Jamaica to kill you, right? We don't have any snakes out there that will, venomous snakes. Barely any snakes at all. So there's nothing in Jamaica, I'm speaking about animals now, to kill you. I mean, to hurt you, yes, maybe the occasional wasp or bee bite or, scorpion bite if you're not being very careful. And of course, we have a lot of ants over the place, so you may get bitten by ants if you're not careful. But as a kid growing up then, one of the rodent or the animal that we had to contend with were rats and mice. Yes, these little things would get into your home, get into your house. They would be on top of your table or wherever in your kitchen, searching for food. Like I think I mentioned in a previous video, I grew up in this little 2-bedroom kind of house, very humble beginnings. There was a table in my living room, and sometimes my grandmother would bring in stuff that could not be left outside in the kitchen because the kitchen never had doors on it, right? So she had to bring in, certain kinds of food stuff into the house. Right, and apart from that, people store other stuff in their home, in their homes too, food items. The problem is that we never had proper storage, right? And sometimes things were just left out on the table. And I have had situations where I'm lying in my bed, right? And I have seen rats, perusing on the table, mice perusing on the table, running here and there, scampering back and forth, sniffing, searching for food, right? Because there was some kind of food in the house in many cases, so that was one animal or one rodent that, a lot of people, a lot of villagers, a lot of neighbors back then had to deal with, right? And it, sometimes it gets to a point where it's frustrating, dealing with these animals. They're in your house, they're in your kitchen, they're eating your produce in the field, If you had a cat in the house or at home, then, the cat would be a common deterrent. Right? But what if you never had a cat? Because, the cat, of course, cats love to eat mice and rats, right? Just in case you never knew that, let me tell you that. So if you have a pet rat or a pet mice or maybe a hamster and you have a cat at home, be careful. All right, so like I said, you know, farmers had to deal with these rodents. You know, people, you know, you're at your home, you have to deal with these things because they're getting in your home at night, man, and they're just all over the place. You know, sometimes they get into the shingles of the old house that we were living in, and you hear them up there. Can you imagine as a kid, man, seeing these things, you know, within such close proximity to you? But, you know, we got used to them over the years. So, you know, while we were scared of them a little bit, we were not scared of them to the point that we couldn't sleep or, you know, I mean, there are times when there would be some big rats come into the house, and they had various ways of getting into the house. Sometimes, you know, the door of the house was you know, the bottom section of the door, I can recall in my home at one point, was rotting out, right? And so that was one way of them getting into the house. They would come in through the rafters up there from the roof and get under the you know, the zinc and shingles and get into the house. They found all kind of ways of getting into the house, man. Yeah. So to deal with them, one thing we would do, or a couple of things we would do, you could either buy rat poison, you know, which you can still buy here, still available. You know, rat bait. You could also buy these little sticky traps. You know, you set some food on it and they would get on it and it would stick them. You know, they would stick to it and they can't move. It's a more humane way of catching them. But the way, the common way of us dealing with them back then, apart from the poison, let's just say the poison was not a desirable way. It was effective, but not a desirable way of dealing with rats. And part of the reason, as a kid back then, I can recall, was the fact that sometimes they would eat the rat bait or the rat poison, and they would die in areas where you're unable to reach them, right? And when they start to decompose, then you would have this stench coming from somewhere that you wish they did not go to die, right? So while the poison was an effective method of dealing with the rats, man, it was not the most desirable way to deal with them. So a common method of, you know, catching them was with the rat trap. Not sure if you've ever seen a rat trap before, but there were several times. Yeah, we had some small ones for the mice and some bigger ones for the big rats, you know, those big, hefty, fat ones. Yeah, and then I can recall we had the wooden ones and we had the metal ones. As a kid, I used to love set the rat trap. One of the common bait would be corn, or maybe a piece of dumpling, or any kind of food, you know, would put on it, you know. But man, when, you know, you're living in a home and, you know, there are rats and mice and there's a trap in the house and that trap is set that night, it was a joy, man, when you hear that trap, you know, that rat trap goes off. So for example, man, you know this big rat is coming into your house at night, coming on the dining table, running under the bed, climbing up on the legs of wherever, you know, you're in the house, you can't sleep properly, can't sleep sound because you're worried that this rat is going to climb onto, you know, I'm worried that the rat is going to climb onto my bed. And my granddad would set the big rat trap, man. Maybe he would put a piece of corn on a piece of corn as bait on it, or something, you know, some kind of food. And then in the middle of the night, maybe you're not sleeping, or, you know, maybe I wasn't sleeping, and you would hear the trap goes off. Bam! And then after that, all you'd hear is this little squeaking. Squeak, 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 squeak. Yeah, sometimes it's the mice, sometimes, it's the bigger trap, like I said. And sometimes it's just the maybe the nose of the rat, the trap comes down, or sometimes it's over the neck, which would be the ideal situation. Well, man, it would be a joy as a kid in the morning to take up that trap or check the trap if you were sleeping, and you would see a mice or a big rat on it, man. You know what I'm saying? Okay, you could cross off this one off your checklist. But a funny little thing though is that sometimes when the trap catch the rat, sometimes the trap is not powerful enough to kill them on impact, right? And sometimes in the morning or even at night, after the trap goes off, you would hear them. You would hear the rat kind of pulling the trap, depending on where it came down on the body of the rat, pulling the trap around the house. So in many situations, what we had to do, or my parents would do, my grandparents, they would tether the trap, tie the trap to somewhere with a piece of cord or rope, a little, so that if the animal is still alive, it would not pull it away. But that was scary as a kid, man, to hear the squeaking and the pulling and the rat trying to get out of the trap. Well, in other situations, it was just like a clean kill, put it that way. 'Cause that's how it was. I'm just giving you raw and real, guys. That's how we had to deal with these rodents, because they were prevalent, they were plentiful, right? And they were a nuisance. Okay? So, when you set a trap and you caught a few of them, man, and you're able to dispose of them, that was a big relief. Big relief. You don't have to. I didn't have to worry that the bread that my mom, my grandparents left out, would be, eaten. You get up in the morning and the loaf of bread or the half a loaf of bread that was left on the table because we never had proper storage, a piece of it would be eaten out, and then we had to cut out that part and we couldn't throw the bread out. We had to eat it, right? But, so what I'm trying to say is that getting rid of these critters, these rodents, man, we just had to do whatever means was necessary. Whatever means necessary to get rid of them. So the rat trap, whether it was the wooden one or the metal ones, as long as it did the job well, we were happy. And that was one of the methods that we used back then as a kid in the 60s, growing up in rural Jamaica. That's how we dealt with these animals, these nuisances. Now, if you're an animal rights person, you may not love this, but I mean, you just have to do what you have to do. Yeah. So, what was it like for you growing up in a rural community or wherever? Because rats they are an ever and present nuisance. They never go away. Whether you're in North America, whether you're in Europe, whether you're in South America, Africa, wherever, there are rats and mice. So how do you deal with them? Is it the bait? Using bait? Is it the rat trap? Is it the sticky trap? Like I said, we dealt with them using, the poison, which we did not like. So the preferred method was the rat trap, man. Yeah, the rat trap. That's how we dealt with them. How did you deal with them if you ever had to deal with rats? How have you dealt with them? And If you, as a child, had to encounter these rodents, close proximity, how did they make you feel? Were you afraid of them? Did they scare you out of your wits? Did you find them to be a nuisance because they were eating your parents' food your parents prepared for you? You know? Tell me about it. All right, so that's all for today. If you like this video, give me a thumbs up. If you like the channel, don't forget to subscribe, subscribe, so you never miss a beat. This is all about childhood memories, going back down into the 60s and early 70s, me growing up in rural Jamaica. So until we talk again, take care of yourself. This is Memory Lane.